I'm Barbara Cueto. God has sent me to some pretty interesting places to tell people about Jesus and his amazing love. It all started when I wrote this book called From Mafia Princess to God's Princess. That's my story. I know firsthand how easy it is to live in the world and to bend to the pressures of its standards and values. But it seems like it's getting harder and harder for a genuine follower of Christ to live in the world, any place in the world, and be a real Christian. Hello and welcome to Real Christians, the show that features, you guessed it, real Christians. So what, you might be wondering, is a real Christian? I asked that very question to some random people on the street, and this is what they had to say. What, in your opinion, is a real Christian?
Somebody that follows the Word of God and does everything right that they're supposed to do, stay out of trouble, and be a good person more than anything.
Are there a lot of those?
Nope.
A real Christian is someone who believes in God.
Just believes in God generally?
Yes, ma'am.
God doesn't have a name?
No, ma'am.
A real Christian is a person that has a personal relationship with the living God.
I think a real Christian is someone who goes to church, who believes in God, who prays to God.
That's a tough one. I'm not sure I'm really qualified to answer that question, honestly.
I take the fifth.
Do you believe in Jesus Christ? Do you even know who he is?
A Christian, according to the original translation of the Bible, is literally a follower of Jesus Christ. Somebody who not only talks the talk, but walks the walk. They have been saved by grace through faith, and that not of themselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. We here at Real Christians do not intend for this show to be a critique of Christians or of Christianity. Our hope is that it will serve as a reminder to us of our God, of his greatness, his faithfulness, his invisible kingdom, and of our role as his children in this spectacular salvation drama. Stay tuned. Coming up in our war room, we will have foremost specialist in spiritual warfare, Dr. Gregory Reid, who has indeed been there, done that, and has survived to write a book about that. And a little bit later, we're going to have living examples of real Christianity in our Walk the Talk segment. So please, don't go away. The Bible tells us in the book of 1 Peter to be sober and alert because our adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. Fortunate for us, God has provided experts on the subject of spiritual warfare to help us Christians to fight against the devil. And to that end, I welcome you, Dr. Gregory Reid, to our show and your expertise. Dr. Reid has a very compelling testimony. I want to give some background first, Greg, if you don't mind. Do you mind if I call you Greg?
That'd be fine, sure.
I read your book several years ago, and I don't remember all of the details, but you had a very scary childhood.
It was a difficult time. I was raised by two very caring, loving parents who were, unbeknownst to them, I was being used by groups in our neighborhood who practiced a ritual sacrifice and occult practices, as well as child pornography and some other things. So I got caught up in several of those webs, and by the time I was 15, I was so fragmented and goofed up that, but I was very powerful in what I was doing, practicing the occult. And if I had not given my life to Jesus Christ, I probably would have either been dead or somewhere doing even worse things when I was an adult.
So these were satanic cults like the Church of Satan?
The Church of Satan is kind of just like not even I mean, that's almost just like a joke to people who really practice magic.
Really?
This was hardcore black magic that goes back centuries, that believe in human sacrifice, that believe that that's necessary for the furtherance of their goals, and that's way beyond anything that the Church of Satan has ever done.
But I guess what I'm getting at is that when the Bible talks about our enemy prowling around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour, he prowled around and he found you.
He did, and several other kids as well.
Through these groups.
Through these groups, and it was back in the 60s when a lot of things were hidden, and it was a very hidden society, but it was also had its feet in Hollywood and some of the people there.
But you say it was hidden. Is it still hidden?
It's more hidden now than it's ever been. Back in the 80s, I worked with a very dear friend of mine, Sue Joyner, and we did a lot of work in uncovering and exposing the satanic networks that operate here in El Paso. It was huge in the 80s, and it's gone almost completely underground, but it's still very much there.
Well, that must have made our enemy, the devil, very angry for you to go. And that leads me to our next topic. How does a Christian in today's society, right now, we live in a society where it's almost, you have a stigma attached, especially here in the United States, not to mention in other countries where Christianity is, where it's not supposed to be a Christian nation as the U.S. is supposed to be, and I'm seeing less and less that it is. However, when Christians stand up for what we believe, when real Christians stand up for what we believe in and Christ and his morality, how do we fight against the enemy? Because the enemy comes against us, doesn't he, when we do that?
Oh, absolutely. And now it's becoming something more in the public arena. We have to remember, because there's like a three-headed dragon that I see that's set up right now to completely take the power out of the Western church. And it's these three things: the abortion issue, homosexuality, and Islam. And those are the three things that we are not prepared to fight. We don't understand how to fight. And in everything that's happening right now, particularly on the political front, it's so crucial that we as Christians understand we do not war against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and spiritual wickednesses in high places. If we don't understand the war in the spirit, if we don't understand that end, we're not going to make any impact in what's happening in the public square.
Okay, but how do we make an impact? How can I make an impact? Or a person that, what this show features is real Christians, not real famous Christians.
Right.
So we all have our battle to fight. Sometimes I think we get the impression that when you're in this public spotlight, or such as you are, fighting a very public battle, that's when the devil attacks. But he'll attack you in the school, won't he? If you stand up for these, what God stands for in the terms of abortion, traditional marriage. And we spoke about traditional marriage before the show. We talked about that is a hot button issue today. I find it interesting that Jesus said in the last days, now he said it's going to be like the days of Noah. People will be marrying and giving in marriage. In the days of Noah, there were many unlawful marriages, right?
Yes, it was. If we really look at, according to the Old Testament, what that really was, violence would fill the face of the earth. Colorado did not surprise me just recently at all, because this is a result. Psychologists say, what was wrong with this guy? And I say, sin gave birth to death. That's the explanation. And the war is getting very visceral. So we as Christians have to realize, whether we're in the school, whether we're at our jobs, whatever we're doing, whether we're fighting for our families, it is a one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat, and we need to realize we need to keep ground and move that ground forward. And the way that we do that is by leading the people around us to Jesus Christ. But make no mistake about it, we're in a post-Christian era now, where the forces of darkness are going to seek to silence the word of Jesus Christ in this age.
And they are.
Yes.
And they are. It's getting more and more difficult to stand up. Recently there was an issue, and I don't want to go too much into it. Someone stood up very publicly for traditional marriage and has absolutely been lambasted because of it. You almost can't say that God's law is law in your life. And as much as certain groups claim to be very tolerant, they are very intolerant to Christians.
Yes.
And so how do we fight that? How can I fight that?
Well, we fight it, first of all, with prayer, and secondly, with love, loving the people who are opposed to Christ. But we also have to have a new position where we're willing to say, this far and no farther. This will not infect my family. This is not getting into my children. And closing the doors, first of all, to our homes of all of these things, all of the garbage that's on the internet, any other place, maybe monitoring what we're seeing on TV. We have to start cleaning out our houses and then just going forth in the public and letting people say, hey, look, you know, we may not agree on this, but it's about Jesus. It's not about your sin, my sin. It's about Jesus Christ and what he says. But it's going to get difficult because the attempt is now, even in California, they're trying to pass a law to make it illegal to counsel people to get out of homosexuality. You can go to jail for that if this thing passes. So Satan's attempt here, it's not whatever you think about is it's not what it's about. And I told my class on spiritual warfare, if you don't understand the spiritual component, it's just going to look like the whole world's gone mad.
Right.
When you understand this, then you understand, like a law in California, the purpose of it is to keep believers from leading gay people to Jesus Christ. And it's issues we just have to say, well, I know what the Bible says, I know what it commands me to do, and I'm going to do this even if it will cost me jail time, which it will some of us before it's over.
So Christians really, the greatest spiritual battle I think that takes place in my life is when I am tested as to whether or not, when my loyalty is tested. Am I willing to go to the grave for Christ? Am I willing to go completely all out for Christ? Am I willing to die for him? And I don't mean just a physical death. Am I willing to die to myself? Am I willing to die to my family? I think that every day God asks us to make a choice. If we're willing, if we're going to go to the polls in November or whenever the polling time is, are we willing to die to whatever the world tells us is right? Whatever the world is telling us, and more the world is telling us is right.
Well, it is. The world is pushing us into a corner. And that's at the point where we have to say that that's it. I can't compromise on these things. And it's not going to be easy because we're so used to responding, you know, going with the flow, whatever, you know, the media says, whatever. And to just turn around and say, you know, I'm not going in that direction, it will be costly on a number of different levels. But, you know, that's where we have to make that decision. When Jesus turned to all the people following him and said, unless you eat of my flesh and drink of my blood, you shall have no part of me. It says from that point, many turned back and didn't follow him anymore because he was saying, I want it all. And this is the moment of truth for the Western church, where we just want a little bit of Jesus to make us comfortable.
Right.
Or whether we want all that he is and make a powerful impact so profound in this age that it's going to be written down in the eternal books.
Right. And I guess that's the entire point of our show. Dr. Reid, I hope that you'll join us again.
I'd be glad
because
to.
There are many other battles that we need to discuss. And what Dr. Reid is saying, what the Bible is saying, is that we need to be real in our Christianity, whatever the cost.
From Mafia Princess to God's Princess is the story of how God miraculously turned Barbara Cueto's tragic past, including marriage in the Mafia, into a testimony that has transformed and encouraged people the world over. For your tax-exempt gift of $20 or more, we'll send you a signed copy of this book. For your gift of $30 or more, we'll send a CD of Barbara's, which includes Princess, a song that has spoken to women's hearts everywhere. Call the number on your screen now to partner with us and the crucial ministries we support, or go to realchristianstv.org for more info.
I'm here in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, a few scant miles from the American border. And even though this has been called one of the most violent cities in the world, there's a safe haven for children here because of YWAM, because of Youth with a Mission, and the wonderful volunteers in this organization.
The children that we get come from all different economic strata, but a lot of families that are poor, that have been, you know, we see poverty, addiction, violence, abuse at the core of a lot of the children's problems in their family situations. We don't take children just to take them. They have to come from a situation where they're in danger or in danger of being harmed in some way.
I'm Brenda, and I grew up in Rancho Los Amigos, and it was my home from the age of 3 until I turned 18, and then I started my life outside, but not away from the children's home, who will always be my home and my family.
But I feel like God's given us a mandate to see these children raised up to be world changers, to see them educated, to see them be bilingual, to see them be able to go into the world and take the Christian worldview that we teach them into whatever sphere of society that they go into.
I've been very blessed spending the afternoon here with these children and with these wonderful Christians that run this organization, doing what Christ asked us to do, to feed the poor, feed the hungry, take care of the orphans. Please, if God would lead you, help support one of these precious children. Give to this wonderful cause. That's really fabulous. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed my time with you all in Juarez. And I welcome to the show today Brenda Luna and Mary Beth Mayfield, the director of YWAM El Paso Juarez. And I thank you guys so much for being here today, and thank you for the work that you're doing in Juarez, Mary Beth. I want to thank you on behalf of Christ for doing that work and embracing those children that are largely forgotten, are largely ignored, especially in a city like Ciudad Juarez that is so
Thank
dangerous.
you, but I think it's a privilege. It's a privilege to do the work.
It truly is. And since the name of the show is Real Christians, and we're talking about real Christianity and real Christians such as yourselves, I just want to do a little background on you, Mary Beth, first to start out. Tell me, were you always a missionary?
No, I started out in the private sector. I was did management, marketing, and training for a fast food company for 10 years, and enjoyed what I did corporate training. And it was during that time that I came to know the Lord, prayed to be a missionary for 8 years, and finally God released me to become a missionary. And then God led me to learn Spanish, work with Spanish-speaking people, and then led me here to El Paso, Juarez.
So you forsook that drab life for the big money of missionary work, right?
It's funny, but the people from the place where I worked always say, you gave up so much. And for me, it's more a privilege of what I do now, and I didn't give up anything important. The things I gave up pale in comparison to what I've received just from trusting in the Lord for everything I need to do what I do, and just seeing the result in people's lives, like in Brenda's life.
Brenda, I want to hear of your story, and I'm sure that our viewers are going to want to know about your background. You were actually raised in Rancho Los Amigos,
Yes.
The children's home that we just looked at. What age were you when you went?
I was 3 years old when my mother took us to the children's home. It was me and my 3 older brothers.
And what was your life before coming to the children's home?
Well, my mother was a single mother, and it was really difficult for her to provide for us, be with us, and at the same time work. So she would leave us in this abandoned swimming pool where we were living. She would leave us all day just so that she could go to work and bring home whatever money she could to provide meals. When she realized that this was definitely not the right thing to do, she looked for a place, and Rancho Los Amigos, the children's home, opened their doors to us, and they took us in when I was 3 years old.
It's hard for us in the West, I think, to imagine living in an abandoned swimming pool. And yet, this isn't a solitary case. This is something that you see time and time again in your work, that you see children in unbelievable circumstances.
Yes. Children left on the street. Some of the children we just took in. There was a 4- and a 5-year-old that were missing for 3 days from their home, but their parents didn't realize it because they were so high on drugs. And the kids were found in the streets and then taken in by Mexican social services before we got them. And so, you know, sad story after sad story, but the beautiful thing is that there's also redemptive story after redemptive story, and and the hope that just the Lord brings into their lives, and the changes that He makes just by bringing them to a safe place where they receive love, they receive security. You know, you give them some boundaries, and they thrive within that. It doesn't take much to change a child from not speaking, not eating, being sullen, to a child that is playing and loving and kind and growing. One little girl, Juliana, was with us for 2 or 3 weeks, and her father came to visit. And he got very mad. He goes, "What have you done to my daughter?" And we're like, "What do you mean?" "Well, she's not the same child." "Well, what do you mean?" And he described a child that was mean and horrible at home, and he saw her being loving and kind and giving and laughing. And he was wondering what we had done to her to change her into this child that was so radically different from the one he knew. And all we did was feed her and love her and give her boundaries and tell her that God loved her and had a special plan for her life.
And isn't that what we're all called to do? Brenda is a case in point.
Yes.
What might your life have looked like had you not gone to Rancho Los Amigos at 3 years old?
Oh gosh, and I do often think about that because I do have cousins that unfortunately weren't offered the same opportunity of me, and I do see their lives compared to mine. And I mean, it really was God that called my mother to that children's home and made it into this huge opportunity for me to receive a family, even though it wasn't my biological family per se or a normal situation. I grew up with those boundaries that let me experience relationship and healthy relationships that encouraged me throughout my life, and they helped me dream big, and they were always consistently loving me and supporting me in everything in my life.
Right, and even though you still had a point where you rebelled, just like in a normal home, I suppose, once your kids hit the teens, the terrible twos have nothing on the terrible teens. But you did come back to the Lord. And I was talking to you earlier, and you were saying it's because of that background that you had, and because of the love and support of people like Mary Beth. And I was amazed when I was at the children's home that the children were so quiet, so ordered, so not unruly, and not because they're being thrashed into submission, but because they're being loved, and they don't have the needs that they might have. It's not uncommon for us to cross the border and see children working, begging at the youngest age, and these, I think it's a beautiful thing that you've taken them in, that you're taking them in, and that you're giving our viewers an opportunity to participate in this ministry in a big way. And at the end of our show, we're going to give contact information so that anybody who feels compelled by God to contribute will be able to.
That would be great.
And I just, again, want to thank you. And thank you, Brenda, because I know you have gone out now onto the mission field. Now you have made, maybe you are going to find secular work because you're in college now.
Yes.
And I do hope that your real Christianity will bless those who are watching, because real Christianity is just being a light. Real Christianity is just being love, being Christ, and that's exactly what you're doing. And thank you again for being here. Stay tuned. We've got more to come.
Whether you're a slave to destructive behavior or know someone who is, or if you simply desire to go closer to God, 120 Days to Freedom will help you reach your desired level of commitment. For your tax-exempt gift to this ministry of $20 or more, we'll send you a signed copy of Barbara's book. Call the number on your screen now to partner with us and the crucial ministries we support, or go to realchristianstv.org for more info.
The Bible says in the book of James, chapter 2, verses 19 and 20, "You believe that God is one. You do well. The demons also believe and shudder. But are you willing to recognize, you foolish fellow, that faith without works is useless?" I referred earlier to Paul's letter to the Ephesians, in which he says that we are saved by grace through faith and not of works, lest anyone should boast. And that is very true. But Jesus Christ also said in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, "Let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven." Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a martyr under Hitler's Nazi Germany for standing up and being a light and salt and light in Nazi Germany, said that he believed that the sum total of Christianity could be found within the Sermon on the Mount, from the Beatitudes, Matthew chapters 5 through 7. If we truly lived, if we were truly disciples as Christ called us to be, we could affect our communities, we could affect our worlds through just being salt and light. Jesus said that a light, hidden under a bushel is no light at all. Salt that has lost its flavor is no good for anything but to be thrown onto the road and to be trampled on by men, to be trampled on by the world, he might have said. Salt that has lost its flavor is dirt. There was a very famous pacifist and leader in India during the British reign of India. His name was Mahatma Gandhi. He loved the Christ of the Bible. He loved what Christ taught about. He loved who Christ was, but he simply couldn't abide becoming a Christian because he said he'd never met one. There were many Christians living in India at the time, and this is not meant to be a criticism of them. It is meant to be a reminder to us all that Christ calls us to live up to his standard and no less. A rose does not need to preach, Gandhi said. Its fragrance is its sermon. Isn't that what Jesus was talking about in the Sermon on the Mount? That our light is not something that does anything, it just is. We fall so intensely and fully surrendered and in love with Jesus Christ that we can't help but love those that he loves. We spoke earlier with Beth, who does her work, who left her career to work with children in Ciudad Juarez. And right now we know about Juarez because it's in the news every day. It's in the world news. It's become known as one of the most dangerous cities in the world. But at the time that she came, it was just a little border town in Mexico, a nothing town. But she left her job and went there because Jesus said, "Follow me," and she followed. When Jesus called all the disciples, he said, "Follow me." I would say Jesus is saying to us all today, follow me. The original translation of Christian in the Bible, Christianos from the Greek, means follower of Christ. In order to follow him, we must follow in his footsteps. Be that light. I would never want it to be said that my children did not become Christians, did not believe in Christ, because they didn't see my light shining in the home. I want to be able to affect people at the grocery store. I want to be able to affect people in my workplace, everywhere I go. It almost sounds comical when we say, what would Jesus do? But what, brothers and sisters, would Jesus do in every single situation? I believe that God is glorified when we ask him that question in every circumstance of our lives. When we ask him, Lord, what would you do? What would you have me do? Wouldn't this world be a better place if we Christians, not anybody who doesn't know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, but we, the church, if we let our light shine before men so that they may see our good works and glorify our Father who is in heaven. I do hope that you'll join us next time for Real Christians, when we will be taking a closer look at Christianity, at Jesus, the Lord of the Bible, the Lord of our lives, and as we'll be examining the lives of Christians who are going out there and letting their lives shine. Just ordinary Christians, like you, like me. I do hope you'll join us next time. And until then, may you have peace. May you have great blessing. And above all that, may you be real.
If you need prayer, please email your prayer requests to prayer@realchristianstv.org. If God is calling you to partner with us in our work, call the number on your screen, or you can donate online at realchristianstv.org. God bless you.
Please contact us to order your own copy of today's episode.